Hello there, and welcome to Wildcard Decks, a channel where I like to highlight some of the more off-meta options, along with highlighting cards that are perhaps not particularly used or used in the context of the leaders that the deck is with, if that makes any sense. Excuse my voice, I am developing a bit of a cold, but I will push on regardless. So today I'm looking at Dooku Blue. Now, when looking at which colours to go with for Dooku, it was all about what are the separatist units that don't already have exploit. And in yellow and red, there's not a great selection in those colours. And excuse me, the best choice I would say is blue, and that is primarily because of the Count Dooku unit, which I will get onto a bit later. But yeah, hopefully in the next few sets we'll start to get some more separatist units so that we can have a bit more choice and variety with Dooku. So the general aim of the deck is to get to the later game to finish the game out. You're pretty much looking to survive up until that point. We do have a few finishers to help with that, and yeah, I'll get into it. So in terms of the numbers, it's perhaps a little bit misleading. It's relatively light on units, but we also have ways of generating battle droids, so we do get a number of tokens as well. And then resource cost, again, this is a little bit misleading because, for example, if you've got a 5-cost separatist unit, then you can exploit it out and pay 3 resources for it, so it can be played earlier than that. So this perhaps isn't a very indicative list to be looking at. And then rarity, it's put a special one in. That was Super Laser Technician, but it was also a common in the Sparkle Rebellion booster packs, so it's not quite accurate. And then I do have 2 legendaries, but then the rest of it is probably, I would say, relatively plausible to put together. So Dooku himself, I've gone with a 30 HP base because, as I say, we're looking to survive and make it to the late game, and giving a shield via security complex might be useful for sentinels, but if you don't draw a sentinel, then you're just not going to use it pretty much. And the Power City one, giving Dooku an extra health, I mean, sure, that'll make him a 10, but he's a 7-cost leader. In some games, you may not even make it to him if you don't survive before that. So, yeah, we need as much HP as possible. And actually, with the new set, there's going to be bases above 30 HP, so that might also be an option with him, depending on what the downside is to those. So, what does he do? Each phase, you can exhaust him to play a separatist card from your hand. It gains exploit 1. So even if your separatist card does not have exploit tied to it, it will gain it. So it can be played for 2 cheaper, so long as you defeat one of your deployed units. So it could be a genuine unit, or it can be one of your battle droid tokens that we're generating along the way. So as I say, he is a 7 to deploy leader, so he is very late, which can make it difficult to stabilize. But when he deploys, he is very beefy, so he will survive a few hits. I tend to use him as cleanup, so with 5 attack, he can take out quite a good number of things, and hopefully by the time he is deployed, their units will also be slightly damaged, because he does have Overwhelm, which can be relevant. And then on attack, the next separatist card you play this phase gains exploit 3. So there can be a question of sequencing, but to be honest, you're not really going to make much use of this. There might be some occasions where if you do have a load of fodder out, you can get the Invisible Hand out for 2 resources, which would be exceptional. But in most instances, it's going to be his non-deploy exploit ability that you'll be making use of. So, excuse me. So, a little bit of a different format. We'll go through all of the fodder generating cards first. So, Confederate Courier, 2 cost in space. So, pretty much turn 1. If you don't have this or Wartime Trade Official or Droid Deployment in your hand, then you're not interested. You need to mulligan because it's going to be pretty tough from there on out. Poggle is a good backup, but I would say you want one of these 3 at a minimum. So Confederate Courier, when it dies, creates battle droid tokens, so it's got 2 exploit options available to it. It's also quite useful if there were some kind of Overwhelming Barrage, for example. I mean, that's further later into the game, but with droid deployment, then they would be able to take out both your battle droids. If you've got Confederate Courier, then they can kill this, but then the battle droid doesn't create until Overwhelming Barrage has been resolved. So you will still have a battle droid left over to exploit if you are able to. Droid deployment creates 2 battle droid tokens, so it's action efficient in that you get 2 units out for 1 action, so then you can still maintain the initiative if you started with the initiative. Grievous reassembly, so you can heal 3 damage from a unit and create a battle droid token. So your main targets for this are going to be the sentinels that we've got. Subjugating Starfighter might be another one. If you've ambushed in and killed an A-Wing, then you can heal it back up and get a battle droid token out of it as well. But yeah, those are the main targets that we'll be looking to use that on. I've gone with just the 2 of Poggle the Lesser because in my experience he just seems to die really quickly and I don't really get much value out of him. So yeah, I've only gone for 2 of him, but basically whenever you play another unit, you can choose to exhaust him and generate a battle droid token. So he is a self-sustaining production line for your exploit. Options. Wartime Trade Official is basically the same as Confederate Courier, but it actually has a health pool, well, and it hits for 1 less. So again, they kill it, or it dies, or you exploit it out, you still get fodder left over, which is really useful. Super Laser Technician doesn't create fodder, but he himself is fodder. You are ideally looking to play this out and then be able to exploit it, get an extra resource as well at the same time. So it's kind of cost neutral in a way because you generate a resource, you get a 2 resource discount on whatever you're exploiting out as well. One thing to remember is that you cannot use the resource that he generates to exploit whatever unit you're looking for. You have to be able to pay for it with just the 2 exploit and the resources you already have before he goes into your resource row. Reprocess. This is a curious one because whilst it costs 3, it's not a card that you're going to want to play or really be able to play until kind of a bit later in the game, because ideally you want to use it when you've got 4 units in your discard pile, and then you'll get 4 battle droids out of it. So in exploit terms, that's 8 resources that you're going to be able to use. And when you've got the Malevolence, that can potentially mean that you're able to play that for 1, which is always going to be very good. I've just gone for 2 of those because, as I say, it's more situational, and you need to get to the latest games for it to be of real value. It does have the bonus of if you're against a control deck that is just looking to mill you out, then because the units that you pick go onto the bottom of your deck, then if they vigilanced you twice, for example, then they've milled you for 12. If you manage to get this for 4 units both times, then you've replenished 8 cards in your deck, and control decks like to draw cards themselves as well. So you may have actually just cancelled it out completely, and you'll if you get to that point, you'll reach the ends of your decks at the same time if they've not restocked, etc. So it's just an added bonus, really. And then Subjugating Starfighter costs 4, but you can exploit it out for 2. And if you have the initiative, it creates a battle droid token. You're not always going to be able to pull this off, and it's not something you should be. If you can't get the battle droid token, doesn't mean you shouldn't play it, because a 3/3 ambushing in space, it can kill the majority of the early space units that we're seeing. So it kills A-Wing and survives. It kills a Y-Wing and survives. It kills the Lurking TIE Phantom and survives. 7th Fleet Defender is its enemy because it will only take the shield off and die itself. But yeah, it takes out a lot of the space units, and it might survive itself as well to then be able to do a bit more cleanup as well. And as I say, it's a full cost, so if you've got any of your fodder out turn 1, they play an A-Wing, you could choose to exploit one of your fodder, ambush it out, kill the A-Wing, and if you have the initiative as well, then you've replaced the fodder as well. So overall, quite an important card in the deck. So onto the ground units that are not fodder necessarily. As you get into the later game, they might become fodder. But Calculating Magna Guard is one of the cards that we have to help us survive, because when it's played, it gains Sentinel. If it survives into the next phase, then as you exploit things, it will gain Sentinel as well because the friendly unit has been defeated. So yeah, a 3/4 Sentinel for only a 3 cost is pretty useful. The 4 health is quite significant. Droid Commando, similar vein to the Magna Guard, but more offensive, because so long as you have another separatist unit, so that could be a battle droid token or a proper unit, so to speak, then it gains ambush. So the ability to ambush on the second phase into a 2-cost unit, or a 2 powered unit, and surviving is quite significant. And then this can also be a target for Grievous Reassembly to heal it back up and gain a battle droid token out of it as well. Patrolling AAT is a sentinel, so very important for trying to survive, and it's a 5 cost significantly, so you can play it phase 2 for 3 resources with exploit, and with a 5 health pool it will probably stick around for the next phase unless they've played 2 units out, and then they might be able to take it out in the same phase as well. But there is another sentinel, 5 cost, I think it's B2 Legionnaires, and it has 5 power and 4 health. I've gone for the longevity option, but I mean, you could probably have a case for having both of them in as well, to be honest. But yeah, I've gone for the higher health option as it's a sentinel. Now we get on to one of the primary targets that we're looking to exploit, because for 7, this is a decent unit to be playing out normally, but if you're able to play it out for 5 resources, then we're really cooking. So 5/4, so pretty crap stats, let's be honest, for a 7 resource unit. It does come in shielded, so he can come in with his ability when played, defeat a unit with 4 or less remaining HP. So this includes leaders as well if you've done some damage to them. Comes in, takes a unit out, and then in the next phase with his shield, hits for 5, hopefully takes out another unit. So he does quite a good cleanup operation, and I say he is the main thing we are looking to exploit out, so that's why I've gone for all 3 of them. And then one of the few non-separatists in the deck, so he can't be exploited out, you'll always have to pay full price for him. Supreme Leader Snoke, basically just because we're in the blue villainy colours, he's too good to not play, really, when you're looking to get to the late game. So I only have 1 of him. You could probably make a case for having 2 of him in the deck. And I should say, or remind, that I only showcase decks that I actually have the cards for. They're never going to be, well, not never going to be, but they are unlikely to be optimized to the gills. So anyway, he comes in and gives everything -2/-2, apart from leaders. Do not forget about that. So yeah, if you've done some damage to their units already, because we do have Overwhelming Barrage, then you can set up a wipe the next phase with Snoke being deployed, and just helps us survive and stabilize in the late game to finish them off. On to the space units that are not fodder. So we've got Devastating Gunship. I'm not entirely sure on the numbers on this, if we should be going with 3 of them instead, but basically you can play this out on your second phase for 3 resources with exploit, which can be significant, because if you're playing against a deck that likes to put crafty smugglers out, then you can defeat that unit straight away because it has 2 or less remaining HP. And again, this does not discriminate. It can include leaders, so if you've done a significant amount of damage to their leader, you can finish it off with this as well. So overall, a good card to be playing phase 2. It does have grit as a bonus as well, so what you can do, it's unlikely to happen, but if you do Overwhelming Barrage and you have some damage left over, you could assign it to this to power it up. But yeah, that's unlikely to be something that will actually happen. So now we move on to the units that we're really trying to finish the game with. So the Invisible Hand, it seems quite ironically unimposing, considering its title is Imposing Flagship, because the 4/7 stat line is not particularly exciting. But when played, you create 4 battle droid tokens, and then significantly, on attack, exhaust any number of friendly separatist units and deal 1 damage to the defending player's base for each unit exhausted this way. So what this means is that if your 4 battle droids are still around, when you're able to attack with this thing, you're actually hitting for 8. So this also has the bonus effect of if they've got a Concord Dawn interceptors or any kind of sentinel in space, then you are still able to do some damage to their base. So you'll do 4 damage to the sentinel, and then however much damage based on whatever number of separatist units you exhaust to their base. So it also means you can take your opponent a bit by surprise, because if you do have any other separatist units around, you can hit for more than 8 potentially. And if you're not far away from killing their base, you might actually be able to finish the game off by just exhausting everything, even though that wouldn't be the most amount of damage possible, so to speak, on the board with the power. So yeah. Another thing as well is that if you exploit this out for 6 resources on your 7th, when you have 7 resources total, you create 4 battle droids. You've got 1 resource left. You can then, if you wish, pay the full exploit 4 on Malevolence with your 4 battle droids and play this out for just for 1 resource. So then suddenly you've got a Space Armada to help finish the game off. So speaking of the Malevolence, it's the only card in this deck that actually has exploit already tied to it. What it does mean as well is that with Dooku's ability, you can technically stack it up, so it can be exploit 5. So if you exploit 5 units, you can play this for free. Unlikely to happen, but it is a potential that you can do. So it's a 9 cost. Sometimes when you get to the late game and you already have 9 resources, it might just be worth playing this out for its full cost anyway. But it's one of the few sources of healing we have in the game, so quite significant in that sense, but also when played, give an enemy unit -4 attack for the phase, and it also can't attack for the phase. So the -4 is more if you want to be able to take that unit out and take less damage to your own units. The fact that it also can't attack means you're probably preventing more than -4 damage. Perhaps they've put a significant upgrade on it. Maybe you've got a lurking TIE Phantom that's been, got 10 experience on it or something daft. Then, yeah, you're going to be saving yourself, I don't know, 16 damage, however much attack power that would give the TIE Phantom. So yeah, overall, really useful for what we are trying to do here. And 7/7 stat line, the earlier you get it out, obviously, the more difficult it's going to be for your opponent to deal with. It is, of course, vulnerable to Fel the Dragon, but we work with what we can here. On to the non-exploit fodder events. So we've got Repair, because it's a 1 cost and you can heal 3 damage from your base. So there will be some phases where even if you have exploited something out, you'll still have 1 resource left over. So you can just play your 1 resource to make full use of your phase and heal the damage from. It's likely going to be from your base. You could do it from your sentinel, but yeah, base is going to be more likely. Prepare for takeoff. So I'm sure this will start to see more use in the next set, but for 2 resources, you can search top 8 cards of your deck for 2 vehicle units, reveal them, and draw them. So as 2 of our main threats in this deck are in space, which is the Invisible Hand and Malevolence. This will help you dig for them if you've not drawn them yet, or you drew them too early and had to resource them. So yeah, it also helps maintain your hand if you are being attacked with force throw, etc., pillage, all that kind of thing. So yeah, helps to keep your hand healthy as well. And if the opponent is developing a space force, then you can search for subjugating starfighter, the devastating gunship. And when I first put this card into the deck, I did the maths wrong because I forgot that the patrolling AAT is a vehicle as well. So I think roughly a third of the deck is made of vehicles, so you should pretty reliably be able to get 2 vehicles off of this when you play it. And then it's a blue villainy deck, so of course we have Overwhelming Barrage, all 3 of them. It's essential to help clear the board. If you manage to get Malevolence out early and then Barrage with it, you've got 9 to spread around. You're probably going to wipe out the opponent's board. You will want to, even if you might be able to kill all of their units with, no, that makes no sense. Yeah, you might be, depending on what your hand is like, if you've got a devastating gunship, you may not want to kill one unit because you'll be able to finish it off with that. So you might be spreading the damage around a little bit differently, if that makes sense. So onto the wild card, and I think this definitely fits the bill for a wild card. Clone. So this is another of the non-separatist units that we have. So basically, costs 7, but when it enters play, it can copy any non-leader, non-vehicle unit and have it on your side. So there are only 2 targets in this deck that we're looking for, and one of them I did manage to pull off once, which was quite funny in my opinion. Probably not when you're on the receiving end of it, but basically you want to clone Dooku, so long as there's another unit out on their side that has 4 less remaining HP, so you've double killed them in quick succession, which is going to be quite effective. But also Snoke. So if you manage to clone Snoke, then everything on their side, apart from their leader, gets -4, -4. You've probably won the game if you manage to do that by default. So yeah, that is the main reason we have cloning here. And I mean, I only have 1. I probably wouldn't go above that anyway, because as we're looking to get to the late game, you will get through quite a bit of your deck, so that will increase the chances of you pulling this anyway. So yeah. Of course, if you don't hit your targets of Dooku or Snoke, you can clone something on the opposing side. So if they played a Luke, a Crate Dragon is probably a bad one actually, because they'll just do 7 damage back to you. Zillow Beast, or all those kind of massive units that can come into play. Han Solo units, you can clone him, kill him back with Han Solo, and take no damage back. So yeah, all those kind of units you can look to bring one over to your side essentially. So yeah, that is the deck. I think it pretty much functions how I want it to. I'm sure there's going to be a better version of this, which includes the likes of Rivals Fall, some takedown, or your standard removal options. I don't particularly have a brain to put a deck together like that. I'm quite adept at taking those kind of control decks and being all right with them, but putting one together myself, I find it difficult. So yeah, I'm sure. I think Rivals Fall is something that is definitely needed in here somewhere, because Dooku is a 7 resource leader. There might also be a space for resupply so that you can get to him quicker. Maybe instead of reprocess, that might be an option. But yeah, overall, I'm quite happy with how this functions as a deck. How competitive it is another question. It struggles into Sabine, which I knew would be the case, and that's where you probably would want the likes of Takedown. But yeah, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.